To bring into the conversation, our friend there at the American Institute for Economic Research, Peter Earle. He joins me. So, Peter, I guess we can just boil this story down to more pressure by more people within the Trump administration, the president himself, on another member of the Fed board.
Yeah, and of course, this is going to be another test similar to the ones we've seen lobbed at Powell about the very difficult standard to remove a member of the FOMC, which is for cause. Typically that requires proving misconduct, incapacity, neglect of duty, and the accusation against Governor Cook here is that she listed 2 different residences as her primary home to secure favorable mortgage terms. Of course, this is just an allegation. We don't know if it's true or not, but this is the allegation. But again, it's a very difficult legal standard to prove, and that's what would be necessary for removal. And I think we're far away from that happening right now.
So, Peter, what is the FHFA, this agency? What does it do?
Yeah, the Federal Housing Finance Agency is essentially a board that oversees mortgages and the basis upon which they're given, and it looks for patterns in mortgages, that sort of thing.
Okay.
They have a lot to do with housing, with the administration of housing policy in the U.S.
Okay, but can that agency make a criminal referral? I mean, that part of the story is what struck me. Can Bill Pulte, the commissioner of the agency, do that? Who is he making the criminal referral to? The DOJ, presumably?
I guess that's a little bit beyond my my sphere of knowledge, but but I assume that they do have the power to do that. I mean, generally speaking, they have certain referral powers. I would guess that would be one of them. Okay,
but Peter, what's the subtext here? Why doesn't Trump want Lisa Cook on the FOMC? We know he doesn't want Powell as chair of the board over his, disagreements on the interest rate question. Is it the same thing with Cook, do you think, going on here?
Absolutely. I think this is part of a multi-pronged campaign that's targeting the Federal Reserve leadership and policy. He's recently renewed his assault on Powell, saying that the rates are too high, they're hurting the housing industry. He wants steeper cuts. He's threatened legal action over the renovation costs at the Fed's headquarters. No sooner did Governor Kugler resign than Trump leapt at the opportunity to nominate Stephen Mirren, who's currently the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. So he's looking to do all he can to stack the board with people who will be have an affinity for his rate cut aspirations.
All right, so I guess we should talk about what we're expecting Powell to say in Jackson Hole on Friday and whether or not we can divine anything from it to see whether or not he and the other governors will decide to ultimately cut interest rates in September or keep them steady. They've kept them steady, 4 times in a row now? So everyone is waiting to see what will happen in September. I mean, is Powell, does he usually give away the game in these symposium remarks in Jackson Hole, or no? Is he going to keep his cards close to his chest?
Well, Fed governors have learned this art of using words and terms that are a little bit difficult to decipher while still trying to get a message across. What I think is interesting is, we had 2 bits of Fed news coming this week. We had today we had the minutes of the July meeting come out, and on Friday, of course, we had the Jackson Hole comments by Powell. And what was I think what will add a little urgency to the Trump administration's efforts against maybe to get more people that they want on the board is that the minutes today showed that the Federal Reserve Open Market, the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, was a lot more concerned about prices rising than they were about softness in employment. Now, they didn't yet see the tremendous non-farm payroll revisions that we saw last month, but one wonders if they would they have said anything different? Because if they are concerned about prices, which they seem to be, that's not an environment in which they're going to be lowering rates. At the very least, they'd keep rates where they are. And if they saw prices rising because of monetary policy and not tariffs, they might actually raise them. So not great news until or unless Powell says something, maybe in his Jackson Hole remarks, about the employment side of the Fed's mandate. But if it's just about prices, I don't see them lowering.
Yeah, according to those very minutes from last month's meeting, Fed officials, quote, observed that evidence so far suggested foreign exporters were paying at most a modest part of the increased tariffs, implying that domestic businesses and consumers were predominantly bearing the tariff costs here. Now, let's kind of theorize what Powell might do come the September meeting. You know, if he does cut rates, will the president's critics say, will Powell's critics say he bowed to Trump's pressure? Or will he, because the Fed's independent, look at the data at hand?
I think it's going to be a lot more about how much he lowers and about the data at that time. I think that given the very surprising numbers we had of non-farm payrolls in July, and if we see a similar number in August, there's a lot of cover for lowering rates, especially if we don't see a big rise in either the PCE or the CPI over the next 2 months. We've got a couple more data points before the Fed meets next time. I could see them doing a quarter point decrease in rates, a quarter point cut, as sort of an insurance cut, but it's going to be nowhere near what the president and more recently the Secretary of the Treasury have been saying they want. They're talking about 200 or 300 basis points lower, which there's no way that's going to happen. I mean, I think that's where it's at.